He was a billionaire who suddenly lost something very important, something that could have cost him everything. But fate placed it in the hands of a poor young construction worker. She had nothing, yet she returned it without even knowing who he was. Why would someone that poor give back so much? And how did that one act change both their lives forever? Welcome to Folktales by Chisom, where we bring you stories filled with suspense, love, and lessons that touch the heart. Sit back, relax, and let's dive into today's powerful story. In the heart of Lagos, where the noise of yellow buses filled the streets and the air smelled of dust mixed with roasted corn, lived a young woman named Mary. She was only 24, yet her eyes carried the weight of someone twice her age. Every morning before the sun climbed fully into the sky, Mary tied an old scarf over her hair, slipped on a pair of torn boots, and stepped out of her small, one-room apartment. Her destination was always the same: the construction site down the road. The site was a place of sweat and noise, where men shouted orders, cement mixed with sand in wheelbarrows, and blocks were carried on weary shoulders. Mary was one of the few women there, and the men often mocked her. "Now woman go to carry block like man?" they would laugh. But Mary never replied. She simply bent her back, lifted another block, and kept moving. Every naira she earned mattered. Life had not been kind to her. At the age of 12, Mary lost both parents in a tragic accident, a bus crash on their way home from the village. In a single night, her world collapsed. No relative stepped in to help. She became the mother and father to her younger siblings, David, who was 8 at the time, and Grace, only 6. From that day, survival became her life's only mission. At first, she sold bread by the roadside. Later, she washed clothes for neighbors. But the money was never enough. Hunger knocked at their door daily, and school fees became an impossible dream. Desperation pushed her to beg a mason to teach her how to work at the building site. It was back-breaking labor, but it gave her enough to keep her siblings alive. She carried blocks, mixed cement with a shovel, and pushed heavy wheelbarrows under the hot sun. Her palms grew rough, her shoulders ached, but she never complained. On nights when her body shook from exhaustion, Mary would sit by the window, staring at the Lagos sky lit by distant stars. She would whisper to herself, "One day things will change. God, one day," but deep in her heart, she wondered if that day would ever come. David, now 18, had become restless. He often muttered, "Sister, we can't keep living like this. Other boys are making fast money." Mary would rebuke him sharply, warning him against bad company. Grace, 16, was quieter, but her eyes carried silent questions that pierced Mary's heart. When will life get better? Mary's honesty was her only wealth. Even in poverty, she never took what wasn't hers. When customers forgot change, she returned it. When a worker offered her bribes to cover mistakes at the site, she refused. People mocked her. Honesty, no, they put food for table. But she held on to her values like a shield. One Friday evening, after a long day at the site, Mary returned home with only bread and groundnuts for dinner. She watched David eat hungrily and Grace carefully divide her share, and her chest tightened. She wanted to give them the world, but all she could give was survival. That night, as she lay awake on the thin mat beside her siblings, a strange feeling stirred in her chest. A whisper, like a quiet promise, lingered in her mind. Change is closer than you think. She sighed and closed her eyes, unaware that fate was already moving, preparing to weave her life into the path of someone she had never imagined meeting. A billionaire whose world was about to collide with hers in the most unexpected way. Victor was only 30, yet people spoke his name like a company. In magazines and on billboards, his face sat beside cranes and tall buildings, the way a signature sits beside a contract. His real estate group had offices in Lagos and Houston. His phones rang day and night. His lawyers and managers moved like shadows, clearing his path. But inside, Victor lived quietly, too quietly for a man surrounded by noise. He did not like loud parties. He did not like cameras in his face. He did not like handshakes that felt like nets. When people praised him, he smiled politely, but his eyes stayed guarded. Years ago, back when he still believed in soft words and pretty promises, someone taught him a painful lesson. A woman who said she loved him but loved the bank alerts more. She left the moment a deal failed and the papers dragged his name for a week. She did not even call. That was the day Victor learned that silence can be safer than company. The only voice that still walked freely in his heart was his mother's. She had small hands and warm eyes, and a way of speaking that could calm a storm. "Respect everyone, no matter how small they look," she would say. "True wealth is not in your account, Victor. It is in the way you treat people." She died before she saw his biggest buildings rise, yet he kept her picture on the first page of every new project folder. Each morning he touched the edge of that photo and whispered, "Thank you, Mama." After more than 10 years of living mostly in the United States, Victor decided to come home for a while. Not for press, not for noise. He wanted 2 months of wind on his face and Lagos sun on his skin. 2 months to drive himself, to visit old streets, to check on lands he had not seen in years, to listen to generators humming at night like crickets. He wanted to remember where he started. The day he returned, the Lagos airport carried its usual music: trolley wheels, footsteps, laughter, and quick arguments at the customs line. Victor wore a plain tee, clean jeans, and a cap pulled low. No entourage, no convoy, just one trusted driver waiting outside and one small leather briefcase in his hand. Inside that briefcase were papers too important to send by email and the kind of dollars people count twice. He kept the bag close to his body, the way a man keeps a promise. At the baggage belt, a child cried. Somewhere, a woman argued about excess luggage. A porter pushed past him, saying, "Excuse me, Olga." Victor stepped aside. His phone vibrated. 6 messages from his office, 3 from a partner in Houston, 1 from a cousin asking if he had landed. He replied to none. He just stood still and waited for his suitcase while holding the briefcase with his left hand. A memory rose in his chest. His mother years ago, standing under a mango tree in front of their old house. The roof then was patched. The sand in the compound was hot. She had wiped his face with the corner of her wrapper and prayed for him. "If you ever forget anything in life," she had said, "do not forget to do good." Victor had not forgotten. He cleared customs without trouble. Outside, the air grabbed him with heat and the smell of petrol. Lagos was not shy. It climbed right into your lungs and sat there. He smiled. He had missed the city, the chaos that somehow worked, the speed that somehow waited for no one. His driver waved from across the parking area. Victor nodded, lifted his suitcase, adjusted the briefcase, and began to walk. But just then, his phone rang. It was his site engineer. "Olga, Victor, good afternoon," the man said. "We have a small issue with the Lekki perimeter line." The survey team— "Hold on," Victor said gently. "Talk to me slowly." As the engineer explained, Victor shifted to the side of the walkway to hear clearly. A family pushed past with trolleys. A policeman greeted someone. The airport speakers called a final boarding. Victor listened, asked 2 short questions, gave 1 calm instruction that solved the problem, and ended the call. He breathed out, the way a man does when a leak has been sealed. His mind began to count the small tasks ahead. See his aunt, send the books he brought for his cousin's children, pass by the bank, inspect 2 plots before evening. He looked around for his driver again, raised the briefcase a little to adjust his grip, and kept moving. People often thought wealth built a wall that kept pain outside, but Victor knew better. Money only changed the size of the problems, not their shape. He had seen rich men cry in quiet corners. He had seen strong men fold like paper when betrayal knocked. He had seen deals collapse because two proud people refused to say, "I am sorry." So he moved through life with steady steps and gentle words, offering help where he could, cutting ties where he must, and guarding his peace like a garden no one else should trample. On the drive out of the airport road, he lowered the car window. Palm trees leaned. Street hawkers lifted drinks and plantain chips. A young girl tapped the glass, eyes bright, voice hopeful. "Sir, buy water." Victor signaled to the driver to stop for a moment. He bought water for the girl and the boy beside her and added something small to their hands. The driver smiled. Victor only nodded. He did not like to make a show of anything that should be private. The car rolled on. The city widened in front of him, the bridges like arms, the traffic like a river that forgot how to end. Somewhere in this wide, hungry city, a story waited, already written by a hand he could not see. Two lines were moving toward each other, his line long and paved with concrete and glass, and another line he could not name yet, rough and dusty, carried by a young woman who did not know that her life was about to turn a corner. Victor did not know her name. He did not know where she slept at night or how many mouths she fed. He did not know the weight of the bucket she had carried or the prayers she had whispered when nobody was listening. He only knew that something in his life felt unfinished, like a house with windows but no doors. When he reached home, the gate swung open, and the guards greeted him with surprise and joy. He greeted back softly, walked through the cool hallway, and set the small leather briefcase on an armchair. For a long second he stood there staring at it. The bag seemed to stare back. He had carried many things in his life: deals, promises, titles, anger, fear. This bag carried a different kind of weight, the kind that could push a man to his knees if he was careless. He picked it up again, this time with both hands, and carried it into his study. He placed it beside his mother's framed picture, touched the glass lightly, and smiled. "I'm home, Mama." Outside, the city hummed. Inside, a clock ticked. And somewhere not far away, past flyovers and side streets and cement dust, a young woman named Mary would soon make a choice that would test her hunger, her faith, and her heart, and pull her name gently into his. The morning sun spread across the Lagos airport, bouncing off car roofs, glass doors, and restless crowds. The air was full of impatience, people dragging suitcases, taxi drivers calling out, and families waving as though distance could swallow their love. Mary had no reason to be there on most days, but since construction work had been slow for weeks, she had taken a small part-time job at the airport to clean the waiting areas and sometimes help passengers carry their light loads for a few extra naira. She walked quickly, holding her mop and bucket, her scarf already damp with sweat. In her mind, she calculated the money she might make today. If luck followed her, she could buy rice and beans in bulk and still have enough left for Grace's school books. She whispered a quiet prayer under her breath. "Lord, help me see favor today." At the same time, Victor entered the departure hall, his steps calm but purposeful. The small leather briefcase in his hand carried more than money. It carried the keys to projects worth millions. Contracts, bank documents, property deeds, and dollars he intended to use for an urgent land transaction in Lagos all lay inside. It was the kind of bag a man could not afford to misplace. Victor kept the briefcase close, but the airport was chaos that morning. A child cried loudly, refusing to walk. An elderly man stumbled on a trolley. Officers shouted at travelers to move to the right lines. Victor's phone vibrated. His engineer again. "Oga Victor! Sorry, the man said in a rush. "The cement trucks are delayed at Ikoyi site. We don't know if—" Victor sighed. He stepped to the side, balancing his suitcase with one hand and placing the briefcase carefully on a row of seats beside him. "Listen to me," he said quietly into the phone. Find an alternative supplier. Call him now. If the trucks don't move, workers will waste a whole day. Yes, sir. Right away, sir, the engineer answered. As Victor gave instructions, a crowd of travelers surged past. Someone bumped his arm, nearly making him drop his phone. He frowned, moved a few steps aside, and continued the call. When the matter was settled, he ended the call, exhaled, and ran a hand across his forehead. His driver would already be waiting outside. He grabbed his suitcase and began to walk, forgetting the small leather briefcase still sitting quietly on the chair. Minutes passed. A cleaner swept near the row of seats, humming. People sat down, stood up, dragged trolleys, and argued with security. Nobody noticed the lonely briefcase. Mary entered that part of the hall just as the crowd thinned. She bent to pick a plastic bottle someone had dropped, then straightened and froze. Her eyes landed on the briefcase. It looked out of place, too fine to be left behind, its black leather shining under the fluorescent light.
She looked around quickly. Nobody seemed to be searching. The families near her were busy checking tickets. The cleaner had already moved on. Mary's heart began to beat faster. Slowly, she stepped closer, bent down, and touched the bag. It was heavier than she expected. Her mind raced. Who would leave something like this? Could it belong to one of those big men that just walked out? She glanced inside quickly, just enough to see stacks of dollar bills neatly arranged and a few thick envelopes stuffed with papers. Her throat went dry. For a brief second, temptation whispered. With this money, she could rent a proper house. David could start school again. Grace would never worry about books. They would eat 3 meals a day and not just bread at night. But another voice, stronger, rose in her chest. Her mother's voice, remembered from long ago. Mary, if it is not yours, don't touch it. God watches. Mary's fingers trembled. She shut the briefcase quickly and hugged it to her chest. Then she marched straight to the nearest security desk. "Excuse me," she said, her voice clear, though her heart pounded. "Someone forgot this bag. Please keep it safe until the owner comes back." The officer looked at her sharply, then at the bag. His eyes widened. "You found this just lying down?" "Yes," Mary said softly, "outside, on the chair." The officer took the bag carefully. He checked the contents quickly, then nodded. Everything was intact. He stared at Mary for a long moment, then said, "Thank you. Most people would never return this." Mary forced a small smile. "If it's not mine, I can't keep it." She turned and walked away, her slipper slapping against the floor. Her chest felt both heavy and light. She had done the right thing, yet part of her still ached at what she had given up. Outside, at that very moment, Victor reached the car park. His driver opened the door, but Victor's hand went straight to his side pocket. Empty. He froze. He checked the other pocket, the suitcase, the car seat. Nothing. "My briefcase," he whispered, panic crawling across his face. The driver looked at him in confusion. "Olga, what happened?" Victor didn't answer. He spun around and ran back toward the terminal, his heart thundering in his chest. That small leather briefcase carried not only money, but his future. One careless mistake and everything could collapse. He prayed under his breath as he pushed through the crowd. "Please, God, let me find it." And somewhere inside, Mary walked away from the security desk, unaware that the man whose life she had just saved would soon begin a search, not only for his briefcase, but for her.
Victor's shoes slapped against the shiny airport floor as he hurried back into the terminal. His chest rose and fell too fast, his heart beating like a drum. The small leather briefcase was not just any bag, it was the heartbeat of 2 ongoing projects. The proof of land ownership, confidential agreements, and dollars meant for urgent payments. If it was gone, weeks of negotiations, even years of work could crumble. "Excuse me," he called as he pushed through the moving crowd, his voice breaking into the noise of announcements and chatter. A few people turned to look at him, but most ignored him. He ran past the baggage area, past the rows of waiting seats where he had last set the briefcase down. His eyes scanned every corner like a man drowning and searching for air. Nothing. Victor's throat went dry. He pressed both hands against his head. How could I have been so careless? He turned sharply and almost collided with a young officer in a Navy uniform. "Sir, calm down," the officer said quickly. "What is the matter?" I lost a small leather briefcase," Victor gasped. "It was here not long ago. Inside are documents, money, very important things." The officer's eyes sharpened. "Follow me." They marched to a small security desk near the entrance of the terminal. Behind it sat another officer, a stocky man with tired eyes. On the desk, resting safely in front of him, was a black leather briefcase. Victor's knees almost buckled. "That's it," he whispered. The officer lifted the bag slowly. "Your name?" "Victor Williams. Open it. You'll find business cards inside with my name and a passport photo." The officer unzipped the bag, shuffled through the envelopes, and pulled out a card. His eyes flicked from the name to Victor's face, then back to the photo. He gave a small nod. "Yes, this is yours." He handed the bag over. Victor's hands shook slightly as he took it. He opened it just enough to check. The dollars were untouched, the documents neatly stacked. Relief swept through him like cool water after fire. Where did you find it?" Victor asked, still catching his breath. The officer leaned back in his chair. "You are lucky, sir. A young lady brought it here a short while ago. She said she found it outside on one of the waiting chairs." Victor's head lifted sharply. "A young lady?" "Yes, she wore a faded scarf, construction boots. She didn't even wait for thanks, just dropped it and walked away." Victor stared at the man. He couldn't believe it. That bag had enough money to change a poor person's life completely, yet she had returned it without touching a single note. "Did she leave her name? A phone number? Anything?" The officer shook his head. "No. She didn't want attention." Victor pressed his lips together, frustrated yet deeply moved. He slipped a bundle of Naira notes from the briefcase and pushed it across the desk. "Thank you for keeping it safe. Please share this with the lady officers here, and if she ever comes back, please let her know I am looking for her." The officers nodded in surprise. Victor walked out of the terminal with the briefcase clutched tightly in his grip. But his mind was not only on the documents inside, it was on the young woman. Poor, dusty from work, yet rich in something far rarer than money: integrity. That evening, in a different part of the city, Mary trudged home from her shift. The sun had dropped low, painting the sky with orange and purple streaks. She carried a small plastic bag of bread and beans for dinner. Grace and David greeted her at the door of their tiny room, eyes lighting up at the sight of food. Mary smiled weakly, handing the bag to Grace. "Share it well," she whispered, her voice hoarse from the long day. David noticed the look in her eyes. "Sister, are you okay?" Mary hesitated, then sat on the mat. For a long moment, she stared at her calloused hands. Finally, she whispered, "I found something today, something that could have changed our lives." David's brows rose. "What do you mean?" Mary shook her head quickly. "Forget it. I gave it back. It wasn't mine." David frowned. "Sister, sometimes you're too honest. Don't you see how we suffer? If God brought you a blessing, why throw it away?" Mary turned sharply to him, her eyes fierce though tired. "Listen to me, David. Stolen blessings turn into curses. Do you want to eat bread today and beg tomorrow? Do you want to wear another man's wealth while your conscience burns?" David looked away, silent, though anger stirred under his skin. Grace leaned against Mary's shoulder, her voice soft. "Sister, God will reward you. I believe it." Mary hugged her tightly. Yet as she lay down later that night, her mind replayed the moment she had shut the briefcase and walked away. "Did I do the right thing?" she asked herself. Her heart said yes, but her stomach, still hungry, whispered another answer. Unknown to her, in a mansion across town, a billionaire lay awake on silk sheets, staring at the ceiling. The same question burned in his mind, but from the opposite side. Who is that woman, and why would she give back so much? Neither of them knew that their lives had already been tied together, that honesty had lit a spark destiny was eager to fan into flame.
The weeks that followed were heavy for Mary. Work at the construction site grew harder as the company rushed to finish a half-built structure. She carried blocks until her shoulders screamed. She mixed cement until her hands blistered. Still, her pay barely stretched to cover food. Grace's school books remained unpaid for, and David grew more restless each day, complaining that honest work was slavery. Mary tried to keep her spirit alive. Every night she prayed softly, asking God for strength. Yet somewhere deep inside, she still thought about that briefcase, the heavy feeling of it in her arms, the money stacked neatly inside, the choice she had made to walk away from a chance to escape poverty. Across town, Victor could not stop thinking about her either. Whenever he entered his study and saw the leather briefcase sitting by his desk, his chest tightened. He imagined her face, the scarf, the dusty boots, the way she didn't even wait for a thank you. Who was she? What kind of woman, with nothing to her name, would give up so much? He had left his number at the security desk, hoping she might call. But the days stretched into weeks, and no call came. Maybe she doesn't even own a phone, Victor thought one night as he sipped water and stared out his balcony. But I will find her. I must. One hot afternoon, Victor decided to visit one of his projects in Lekki. The building was a 4-story complex, still in its early stages, just scaffolds, bricks, and workers sweating under the sun. He drove himself that day, wanting to be quiet and unnoticed. Wearing a simple shirt and cap, he stepped onto the site. The foreman, a loud man with a booming voice, hurried to greet him, not recognizing him as the owner. "Good afternoon, sir. You are here to check the work. Don't worry, we are moving fast." Victor only nodded, his eyes sweeping across the site. Workers lifted blocks, wheelbarrows rolled, shovels hit the ground with metallic clangs. Then his gaze stopped. There, in the middle of the noise, a young woman balanced a heavy block on her head. Sweat ran down her face, her old scarf tied tightly around her hair. Her hands were rough, her boots worn, but her steps were steady. Victor's breath caught. His heart gave a small leap. He knew her. He took a slow step forward, then another, his eyes never leaving her. "It's her, the woman from the airport," he whispered. As he moved closer, the foreman suddenly shouted across the site, "Mary, drop that block and come here." Marie lowered the block carefully and walked over, her hands still dusty with cement. The foreman's face twisted in anger. "You were late again today. Always coming late, always slowing the work. Do you think this is charity? I will sack you this minute." Marie's eyes widened. "Sir, please, I wasn't late. I came before the whistle. Ask the others." "Silence," the foreman roared. "Do you think I don't know lazy workers when I see them? Get out of this site before I disgrace you in front of everyone." The workers nearby paused, whispering. Some smirked, others looked away. Marie's chest burned with shame, but she bit her lip, holding back tears. Just then, Victor stepped forward, his calm voice cut through the air. "Excuse me, did I hear you say you want to sack her?" The foreman turned, irritated. "Yes, sir. This girl is useless, always giving excuses." Victor's gaze was steady. "Do you know who she is?" The foreman blinked. "She is just a poor laborer, nothing more." Victor shook his head slowly, a small smile tugging at his lips. No, she is more than that. She is the woman who returned my briefcase at the airport. The briefcase filled with dollars and documents. The one who could have ruined me, but chose honesty instead. The site fell silent. Workers stopped moving. The foreman's mouth hung open. Mary gasped, her hands trembling. She stared at Victor, finally recognizing him, the tall man from the airport whose name was on the business cards inside the bag. Victor took another step closer until they stood right before her. His eyes locked on hers. "From today," he said firmly, his voice carrying over the quiet sight, "you will not answer to this foreman any again. From today, you work directly with me." Whispers broke out among the workers. The foreman stammered, his face red. Sir, I didn't know she was connected to you." Victor raised a hand. "Respect is not about who people are connected to. It is about who they are when nobody is watching." He turned back to Marie. His voice softened. "You proved yourself when you had every reason not to, and for that I will never forget you." Marie's lips parted, but no words came. Her heart thudded wildly, not just from shock, but from something she could not name, a strange mixture of fear, hope, and wonder. In that moment, under the scorching Lego sun, surrounded by blocks and dust, two lives that had brushed past each other once at the airport finally collided fully. And though they neither of them could see the future, destiny had just taken its seat at the table.
From that day, Mary's life began to change in ways she never expected. The very next morning, Victor sent a driver to fetch her from her small apartment. Grace had clapped her hands in excitement, whispering, "Sister, maybe God has finally answered us." But David frowned, suspicious. "Rich men don't help for free. Be careful." Mary only smiled faintly, hiding her own doubts. She tied her scarf and followed the driver. When they arrived at Victor's office in Ikoyi, she could hardly believe her eyes. The building stretched high into the sky, glass windows gleaming like mirrors, and security guards stood straight at the gates. She swallowed hard, her palms sweaty. Victor welcomed her warmly. He wasn't wearing a suit that day, just a simple shirt and trousers, but he carried an authority that made people step aside without being told. "Mary," he said gently, "I meant what I said yesterday. From now on, you'll work with me directly, not as a laborer, but as part of my site assistants. You'll have better pay and lighter duties." Mary's eyes widened. She wanted to thank him, but the words stuck. Her heart hammered. She bowed her head slightly and whispered, "Thank you, sir." But Lagos is a city where news runs faster than fire. By the end of the week, whispers spread across the site. "Did you hear? That poor girl caught Oga's eye. Of course, she must have something with him. No rich man helps for nothing. Ah, Naso, watch, soon she'll be driving car." The gossip stung Mary's ears each time she passed. Men snickered, women eyed her with envy. The foreman, still embarrassed from being corrected publicly, muttered insults under his breath whenever he saw her. Mary tried to ignore them. She kept her head down, focused on her new duties, checking supply lists, carrying messages, and keeping records. But each night, she lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if she was walking into something dangerous. Victor, on the other hand, found himself thinking of her more than he planned. In board meetings, he remembered her calm eyes. In traffic, he thought of her worn-out scarf. At night, he lay in his wide bed whispering, "Why does she stay in my mind like this?" One evening, he invited her to his office again. "Mary, sit," he said kindly. She sat on the edge of the chair, nervous. He slid an envelope across the table. "This is for you. It's your first new salary. Use it well." Mary took the envelope with trembling fingers. She wanted to refuse, but she needed it too badly. "Thank you, sir." Victor studied her quietly. "Tell me something, Mary. Why did you return my briefcase that day? Most people would not." Mary lifted her eyes slowly. "Because it wasn't mine, sir. Even if I am poor, I don't want wealth that will curse my hands. I'd rather suffer honestly than eat from another man's tears." Victor leaned back, her words sinking deep. He felt something stir in his chest, respect mixed with admiration. But not everyone was pleased. The next week, Victor attended a private dinner hosted by his wealthy friends. Laughter and clinking glasses filled the air. Soon the conversation turned sharp. "We heard a story," one friend said slyly. "You've been seen moving around with a construction worker. Is it true?" Victor's jaw tightened. "Yes, she is honest, hard-working, and deserves respect." They laughed, shaking their heads. "Victor, with all your money you could have any woman. Why disgrace yourself with a common girl in dusty boots?" Victor's eyes flashed, but he remained calm. Better a woman in dusty boots with a clean heart than one in diamonds with a rotten soul. His voice cut through their laughter. The table grew silent. Back at the construction site, things grew worse for Mary. One afternoon, she overheard two women mocking her. "See her pretending to be humble. Watch, she's already dreaming of being Madame Billionaire. Yeso, soon she'll forget us and change her accent." Mary bit her lips so hard it almost bled. Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. That night, she told Grace softly, "Maybe I should quit. Maybe this is too much." Grace shook her head fiercely. "No, sister, don't quit. You earned his respect with your honesty. If people talk, let them. The truth will defend you." Mary hugged her tightly. Grace's words gave her strength, but deep inside, she feared the storm had only begun. Because in Lagos, when the worlds of rich and poor collide, envy, lies, and betrayal are never far behind. And very soon, both Mary and Victor would face a test that could either bind them together forever or tear them apart completely.
The storm arrived sooner than anyone expected. One Friday morning, as the workers gathered at the construction site, a rumor spread like fire through dry grass. "They say Mary stole from Olga's office." "Ah, I knew it. Poor people cannot resist money." "Victor will see her true colors now." By the time Mary arrived, all eyes were on her. Some whispered, others laughed openly. Her heart pounded as she walked past them, her head bowed. She had no idea what was happening until the foreman marched up to her with a smug smile. "Thief," he spat. "We warned Olga about you. You think you can trick your way into wealth? You have finally shown yourself." Mary's breath caught. "What are you talking about? I didn't steal anything." "Lies!" he shouted. "Important documents went missing from Olga's desk yesterday. And who was in the office? You." Gasps echoed through the workers. Mary's knees weakened. She remembered clearly. Yes, she had been in Victor's office, but only to collect supply papers he asked her to organize. She hadn't even touched his desk. Tears blurred her vision as she tried to speak. "I swear, I didn't take anything. Please believe me." But no one listened. Mocking voices rose louder. "See her pretending. Na so them they do. She done chop money and now she dey act innocent." The foreman smirked in triumph, enjoying her humiliation. At that moment, a black SUV rolled into the site.
Victor stepped out, his presence silencing the crowd instantly. His eyes scanned the workers, then fixed on Mary, trembling and surrounded. He saw the tears on her face, the fear in her eyes. "What is going on here?" Victor's voice was calm but sharp. The foreman stepped forward quickly. "Sir, we discovered the documents went missing from your office. This girl was the last person seen there. We believe she—" "Enough," he cut in, his voice cold. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the so-called missing documents. "These papers? They were in my car all along. I misplaced them yesterday." A stunned silence swept across the site. The foreman's face turned pale. The workers froze. Victor's eyes darkened as he faced them. "All of you were ready to condemn her without proof. Do you know who she is? This is the same woman who returned my briefcase at the airport, untouched, with thousands of dollars inside. If she didn't take that money then, why would she steal scraps of paper now?" Whispers of shame rippled through the crowd. Heads bowed. Some muttered apologies. The foreman stammered, "Sir, I thought—" Victor's voice rose, firm and powerful. "Respect is not for the rich alone. It belongs to anyone who earns it. Mary has shown more honor than most of you combined. From today, let no one insult her again. She is under my protection." Then he turned to Mary, his tone softening. "Mary, you did nothing wrong. Look at me." Mary lifted her tear-filled eyes, slowly. For the first time, she saw not just a billionaire, but a man who believed in her, stood for her, and trusted her character above all else. Her heart swelled, not with pride, but with a gratitude so deep it shook her. Days turned into weeks. Victor's bond with Mary grew stronger. He visited her family, meeting Grace and David. Grace welcomed him warmly, her eyes shining with hope. David remained cautious, watching Victor closely, but even he couldn't deny the sincerity in the man's eyes. Soon, Lagos itself buzzed with the story, the billionaire who chose a construction worker. Some mocked, others admired, but Victor didn't care. He had found in Mary what he had searched for in vain: honesty, strength, and love untainted by greed.
One evening, under the quiet sky of Lekki, Victor stood with Mary by the half-finished building. The wind carried the smell of cement and the sound of distant traffic. He turned to her, his face serious but gentle. "Mary," he said softly, "I've built towers and bridges, but they all feel empty compared to what I see in you. You gave back what could have changed your life because your soul is clean. That is the woman I want by my side, not because you returned my briefcase, but because of who you are." Tears slipped down Mary's cheeks. She tried to speak, but emotion stole her words. Finally, she whispered, "I never wanted your money, Victor. I only wanted peace and to raise my siblings with dignity." Victor smiled, his eyes glistening, "And now we will do it together." He held her hands, rough from years of labor, and kissed them gently. In that moment, the noise of Lagos faded, and only two souls stood, bound not by wealth or beauty, but by truth. Moral of the story: true love is not built on money, status, or appearances. It is built on honesty, sacrifice, and character. A single act of integrity can open doors no amount of wealth can buy.